must say, I really appreciate being invited here. When you look at Rosslyn and Arlington, it's just for a guy who's been in the public transportation business for over 40 years, this is the embodiment of what we talk about in other places in the country where you have development around public transportation and around the metro stop. A lot of other places in the country talk about that, but here it's been done. And it's a great example, and as I was talking to a couple of folks before, I understand it's being redone again. So it's just great to be here. Certainly the cooperation, the partnerships, and adding the 3 new elevators into the Rosslyn station, new entrance, is just another great example of how the folks in this area really appreciate public transportation and work to encourage it. So we look forward to even more business at the Metro stop here and also the future development. It's just a great example for the rest of the country. So let me talk a little bit about what we're doing at Metro. As Mary mentioned, a little over a year ago, I was hired to come down to Metro on an interim basis only. I swear we both had an agreement. I would only be there for a year. And I was thinking more like 6 months. And I thought I could do that after having retired from New Jersey Transit, which is an organization roughly the same size as WMATA. And so I came down, and it was quite a challenge, which I expected. But what I found was an organization that, because of the tragedy in 2009 at Fort Totten, and then the ensuing NTSB investigations, the FTA reports, congressional subcommittee hearings, the place had become sort of hunkered down and bunkered. People had gone into their own little units, and there wasn't a lot of forward motion, if you will. And what I also found was a lot of good people, really good people who knew how to run a metro system and just needed somebody to say, okay, let's go in this direction. And that's what we did. I had a very simple agenda because I was only going to be there for 6 or 9 months. And that was to rebuild the foundation. And that's not just the physical foundation, but the building blocks for an organization, both people and how they're organized. And again, focus, just very basic stuff. So that's what we did the first few months. We got people together. We, on the safety area, which, a huge concern, I understood why, after I got there. The safety department was ineffective, didn't have very many people in it, had been moved around among so many different reporting relationships that had really lost its authority. My predecessor had started the search and had actually hired the new chief safety officer. He joined 2 weeks after I joined. And so together, we said, okay, we're going to build this safety department. We brought in people from railroads and other parts of the country. One of my big things in the early days was fresh eyes. People have been doing the same thing for 35 years, and they knew what they knew. And a lot of that was good, but they hadn't really had new blood come in and say, well, in another part of the country we do things this way, and maybe we can learn from that. So we brought in some really experienced people. We were very fortunate. Grew the size of the department, and they report directly to me. And I gave them full authority to go in there, and the operations people knew and understood that these folks couldn't be ignored. They came in, and once they got familiar with the place, we didn't have them sitting in the main office doing reports. They all got embedded out in the field, so they're out there in the different garages, different maintenance yards, working with the folks out there and really conveying to the people in the field who really want a safe operation. This is what safety is about. This is how you operate safely. And we set up communications between the local unions, the employees, the management, and just encourage communication, understanding what were the concerns, but more importantly, feeding back and acting on those concerns. And this was the beginning of reestablishing a safety culture at Washington Metro. And it escalates up all the way from the folks out in the local safety committees, the superintendents. There's an executive safety committee which I sit in on, and there's a board safety committee. That was established by the board, and the board sets very clear policies early on. So you take that all together, and I would say, a year later, a little over a year later, while we certainly don't have a safety culture the way I want it, we've come a long way. People feel free to communicate because of the policies that have been set up. There's safety hotlines, the whistleblower policy, the IG has a thing. We've done analyses. And what we did is we took a very proactive response to the National Transportation Safety Board. They were not happy with us. They felt they had been ignored in their recommendations before the Fort Totten accident. And then we had the Fort Totten accident, and there was a list of very serious recommendations. The board and management turned around and said, we accept that. We're going to address every one of those recommendations, and we're going to do it as soon as possible. And that's what we've been doing. And for me, one of the most pleasing moments was when I was at a congressional subcommittee hearing, probably last August or September. And Debbie Hersman, who was sitting next to me, was asked by the chair what she felt about the safety of WMATA. And she said, this is a lot safer than it was a year ago. That, to me, was recognition of all the effort by everyone at WMATA and really trying to turn an eye towards a really good safety culture. It's going to take years to get there. We've got a lot of work still ahead of us, but I think we at least turned the corner. Another area that we have to rebuild is service reliability. On-time performance was down. Escalators, didn't need to say more. I get a lot of exercise because I ride the system 6 days a week, and I know what it is to walk up and down those escalators. We have set out on a rebuilding program for Washington Metro. I'm not going to declare victory yet. I'm beginning to see the on-time performance creep back up on the trains. Even the escalators, we've got a long way to go. The escalators are a perfect, very visible example of what was going on at Washington Metro for a number of years, and that was not the appropriate level of investment in maintenance. We had good standards. I got a great report from an outside crew that I brought in who I had worked with before at New Jersey Transit that said, hey, you got great standards, best in the country, just not maintained to it. And that was a matter of money. It was a matter of management. Well, we've worked on the management. The next several years we have to execute. And there's going to be a lot of rebuilding of escalators. We have $148 million over the next few years. Foggy Bottom, which is one of our real problem areas, we're replacing the escalators. One is in the midst of being replaced, and we'll continue on with that. DuPont Circle in another month or so. Horrible problems with the escalators there. We're going to replace a number of those and overhaul the rest of them. And that story continues on throughout the system, but it's going to take years to do it. There's going to be a lot of escalators out for repair. When you take one escalator out for repair, you can't operate the escalator next to it. You got to walk up and down it because you don't have any other way to get up and down. Also, Mary mentioned it. We have a $5 billion 6-year capital program. That was another thing. Last year, we had over $200 million hole in the operating budget. We had the capital program had run out. We had the NTSB. We have an interim executive director. Yeah, this was all good stuff. But the gap was closed on the operating side. You all funded, along with the federal government, funded the 5-year capital program. So we know we have the funds there, except maybe one problem I'll get to later. We are really about moving on that. The other thing is, I will tell you that the organization, another area, the engineering effort basically had been dismantled 2 or 3 years before I got there because, rightly, there was going to be more focus on the operations, but you still got to do engineering because you can't forget the fact that the place is 35 years old. It's like not replacing a roof on your house. It's going to start leaking. And that's what was happening. People were not investing in just fixing stuff. And it catches up to you, and it's really caught up to WMATA. So we're ordering 7,000 series cars. They will be the best cars in the United States, I guarantee you. I happen to like dealing with railroad cars. It goes back to my days at the Port Authority when we were ordering new path cars, but we in the industry have learned a lot since then. The Acela train cars on Amtrak, I was in charge of the project that built the high-speed rail, including the train cars. Learned a lot about design on that. Did the same thing at New Jersey Transit. So now I got my hands on these cars. And in fact, we're getting a lot of customer input on it. We have focus groups, customer research, and we were out there looking at the first mock-ups of the cars, and I'm driving the engineers nuts. And I am an engineer. I learned a little design along the road. And so I'm driving them nuts by saying, how can we improve the design? How can we make it look better? Really 21st century. When you get on in these cars, if you've been to New York, you'll know what I'm talking about. You get on a car, you always wonder, what's the next station? Well, right up on the side will be a map, and the lights will be coming up saying what the next station is. You can follow your trickle along there. And it'll be coming up. We'll have all automated voices so you can actually hear the announcements. You'll see that. You'll see that in a couple of years when it starts getting delivered. And some of those cars will be going out to Dulles. Not to Dulles. Yeah, to Dulles. Of course, to Dulles. So, we're working on that. Financial stability, I think we've come a long way on that with the agreements that were put in place next year. And Northern Virginia is such a great supporter of public transportation. Last year and this year, I will say that the one place I didn't have to worry about a good positive response to the need for increased subsidy was always Northern Virginia. It was right there. And frankly, that helps. It really helps in working with the other jurisdictions. And if Northern Virginia can do it, why can't Maryland do it? Why can't the district do it? It's very helpful. So your support is really well appreciated by all of us at WMATA. So let me talk about a little bit where we're heading next. I talked about the new cars. We got this old fare collection system, and it's 35 years old. And think about it. The computer software is 35 years old. And every time, we put a new addition, we want to do everything for the customer. Latest thing was putting regional passes on. Well, every time we do this, Cubic, which owns the software, just keeps charging it for making more changes and maintaining it. The documentation's not there. If you know software, if the documentation's not there, every time you make a change, you think you got it, and then you load everybody on it. Everybody starts using it, and all these little things come up. And we were dealing with that again this week. But we're going to get a new fare collection system. It's going to be an open payment system. Get rid of all that other stuff. You use your chip in your card, something like that, your debit card, credit card, and you go through the turnstile. Get a lot more user-friendly, and I would hope someday we simplify the fare system here. I had my grandchildren down the other day. I stood there, and they laughed at me. For 10 minutes, I stood in front of that vending machine trying to figure out how to get tickets. For those of you who travel, into the district, there's Farragut North and Farragut West, not too far apart, but there's no connection. We're going to have a virtual tunnel connection, so if it's a nice day and you don't want to go down to the Metro Center, switch and come back, you can actually walk from one station to the other and charge it for a second fare. Today, we finally consummated our partnership with Google. So like the rest of the Northeast and many other parts of the country and world, you go on Google today and you can go from any point to another point, and don't do the drive part. Do the public transportation part. It'll give you the route, when the next train's leaving, when the next bus leaving. You've always seen these buses, you don't know where they go. Now you'll know where they go. It'll make it a lot easier. Even I don't want to get on a bus because I don't know where it's going. Now I can do it and feel comfortable about it. But it's really cool. And I will tell you, at New Jersey Transit, when I was there, Google was the first place Google came to in the Northeast was New Jersey Transit. So I sort of was there in the beginning, grew a little bit more with them when they included the New York region, and then now. The cool thing is, from my point of view, I'm a baseball fan. I can now go from my apartment on Google, by Metro, to Amtrak. It'll give me the whole route, times the trains are leaving, get on there, it takes me up to New York, Penn Station, gets me on the subway there, and right to Yankee Stadium. Can you imagine that? By the way, if you want to go to Boston, same thing, I can go to Fenway Park. But now look at it the other direction, the Phillies fans, come down and see the Nationals. I'll tell you, those Phillies fans can do the same thing. They Google it, and they can come right down there, even those Mets fans, Phillies Stadium. So, I mean, that is so amazing, such a seamless network that makes no difference, even locally, whether you're on Ride-On, in Maryland, Washington Metro. It appears to the consumer as one regional system. Makes no difference who owns it. And by the way, you can be sitting in Paris, come to Washington and visit. You can figure out how you're going to get around. And Google. It's amazing. It's amazing. I sort of like this stuff, as you can tell. Buses. We're buying new buses. And by the way, they're very clean buses. And I don't mean the outsides of them. I mean the exhaust. No more smoky buses. I remember the black plumes of smoke on our buses. These are very clean burning buses. Whether they're CNG, we're buying hybrids right now. Very clean. You don't see anything. You don't smell anything. It's much more, in my view, like riding a train than it is taking a bus from the old days, which I remember because I grew up taking public transportation. So I've talked enough about that. We're not doing things like mystery shopper and stuff like that. But let's talk about the money. We dodged a bullet. Through the hard work of a lot of people, including I'm sure people in this room, we made known our concerns about losing $150 million a year that Congress has promised to us, so-called PREA funding. If you haven't met her yet, Regina Sullivan's sitting here with me. She's Director of Government Affairs, and man, is she one heck of a lobbyist. But we don't call that. And we got the support of the business community to work with the delegation here, and we were able to maintain $150 million in there for fiscal year 11. But that was just the first round. As we all know from reading the paper, fiscal year 12 is coming up very shortly, and we're going to be back at it again. And we really need everyone's support in this room to talk to your congressional delegation, to let them know how important Washington Metro is to continue that funding. Because if we lose that $150 million, we'll not only lose that, but we'll probably lose the matching fund from the districts, the jurisdictions. That's 40% of our capital budget. So all that stuff I was talking about before ain't going to happen. The only thing we'll be doing is investing in the safety items and not much else. So we'll go back in the hole, we'll go backwards, service will become less reliable, buying buses, forget that. So we've got to maintain that. In addition, after that's finished, or maybe simultaneously, is the authorization bill for the next so many years. We've got to maintain it there. In addition to that, the other threat is because we're turning back, the Congress is proposing turning back the authorization levels to a base year of several years ago. That's another reduction in funding. Not quite as serious, maybe 10%. So between the two, it's half our capital budget. So if we are to maintain Washington Metro, and it's not just to take people back and forth to work, but to bring people to your businesses and to serve as school buses for a lot of people, to get people to college, but most importantly, like any regional transportation system, it is absolutely vital to the economic competitiveness of this region against other regions in this country. So I ask for your continued support, and I think I'll stop here and take any questions. Let me tell you, at Union Station, which is our busiest station, and we also have a lot of escalator work going on right now, there are plans afoot to actually expand that station, the entrances to it, so there's more access to the platforms, because you stand there and you wait to get up the escalator and stuff like that. As part of that, those other types of improvements will be made. What we're doing in our capital program is there's about a dozen stations we'll be rehabbing every year, and part of that is looking at the lighting and redoing lighting. We also just had some lighting consultants in the past week to bring more energy efficient LED lights. So we're looking at what we can do to improve the brightness and at the same time be greener about it.
What is the timetable for completing the virtual connection between Farragut West and Farragut North?
This fall.
Great.
I'll tell you, to me that was like a no-brainer. Then we got into the software issues. And what I thought would be an easy job turned out to be a hard job, but I am promised by Cubic, and they understand it's one of my priorities, that this fall we should have it. The board, there's some discussion at the board level on that, and we are going to public hearing next week on service changes. That is not among the things being looked at. Okay, so the only context for looking at any earlier closing of the Washington Metro would be in the context of having to advance the State of Good Repair program and getting more time. And actually, I owe the board a report on that next month. I think the next week or so I'm going over with staff. The more likely scenario, I would think, is just like highways, you have to close lanes and stuff like that for a period of time when you do construction. I'm hoping that's where we come out, that sometimes we're going to have to close things earlier on the weekends, but not for the whole system all at once and not for a long, long time. So it's like just for construction outages. So right now, there's no proposal on the table to have a early weekend closings. Yes?
After the completion of the Silver Line, are there any other significant capital improvement programs to the Metro that you're seeing?
And that's a perfect example. The Silver Line, as you probably well know, is not being built by Metro. It's, it's being funded. Well, there's nothing in the newspaper about that. But and that's really, there's two things going on. Our capital program for the next 5 years is totally state of good repair, and that's not going to get us totally out of the hole, but it should make quite an advancement. The board, the new board, Mary among the members, is much more focused on overall strategy for Washington Metro, business plan, and what we're going to do in the longer range. And I think that will then become part of that examination, because it's crowded on Washington Metro. Yeah, we have a lull in the growth, but that, the economy perks up. That'll continue on, usually at 1.5–2% over many years. 15 years from now, and I like to say, 15, 20 years at this point, I like to say, every day is going to be a normal day, and the system can't take that. The traction power system can't take all 8-car trains, and we would have liked to invest a lot more money into at least bolstering the traction power system. We don't have the money to do it this round. Plus, we got so much going on, we just couldn't physically do it. But that's what we have to look at for the next 5–6 year capital program, is what we do. Going to more 8-car trains, increasing the traction power, and then looking beyond that. One of the things that we can do in the medium term, which I'm a great proponent of, is with buses. Priority lanes, prioritization of traffic signals. Don't have people collecting fares on the bus, do it off the bus. Make it more like a rapid transit system than a bus route. We're doing some of that. We've worked with a number of the jurisdictions, the DOTs, to advance that. We've got money to study it, but we've got to do more. We've got to do it faster. And that can carry a lot of people, because of where I come from. There's this express bus lane that goes through Lincoln Tunnel into New York. That express bus lane carries more people from New Jersey than the railroad that goes into New York Independence Station. That's what you can do with buses if you really do it right. Proposing to the board next few months that next year we'll reduce by about 3 trains during peak hours, I'm talking about, from the blue line, and instead of sending them up through here, send them across the yellow line, the bridge. Okay. That allows us to add 3 trains on the orange line, backfill that. So that will help in the interim. And eventually, when the opens up to Tyson's, some of those trains will be directed there. But in Rosslyn, you'll be having 3 more trains in the rush hour, so it should help alleviate. And we also, added a couple of more cars, so we have a couple more 8-car trains just recently. That's what you can do. Yes?
It's a little bit outside of our local area, but what's the chance we're going to see the purple line get built?
I don't know a heck of a lot about that.
Fair enough.
I know it's there. I know Maryland is interested in doing it. Right now, we are only, Washington Metro is only interested in it, not interested in it, but involved in it in terms of planning, interfaces and that sort of thing, trying to help the region. Because we're the only real regional transportation agency, we try to help coordinate between the different light rail proposals or trolley car proposals.